What would you do if cops walked onto your land, heard your neighbors say gunshots, and then arrested you on your own property? It sounds insane, but it can happen faster than you think. And if you say the wrong thing in your first 10 seconds, you can help build the case against yourself. Hit subscribe right now and like this video because what I'm about to show you could help you keep your freedom when police turn a noise complaint into cuffs. Save this video now because you will not remember these lines when your heart starts racing. In the video behind this title, a man is on his own rural property when a neighbor calls police over gunshots. You might hear that and think the case is simple. If you're on your own land, you're safe. If you didn't threaten anyone, you're safe. If you didn't leave your property, you're safe. But that's not how these encounters work. A police contact can go from casual to criminal in seconds if you give officers the wrong words, the wrong body language, or the wrong consent. Today you're going to learn the first question you need to ask, the one sentence that shuts down fishing trips, the safest way to handle ID demands, and the court cases that back up your position. Most people have no idea how fast a just checking on a call visit can turn into a detention. Now let's talk about why this matters to you. When police show up after a neighbor complains, they already have a story in their head. Maybe the caller said you were firing into the air. Maybe they said you were drunk. Maybe they said you were threatening people. You might know that story is garbage, but the officers still arrive with tension high. And here's what regular people do wrong. You walk out angry. You start explaining everything. You point at your range area. You tell them where your guns are. You try to prove you're innocent on the spot. That feels smart, but it often makes your situation worse. You give them details to twist. You give them reasons to keep you there longer. You give them permission without saying the word permission. Here's the reality. Your goal is not to win the argument in the driveway. Your goal is to protect your rights, lower the heat, and give police as little extra material as possible. The first tactic is simple, and you need it ready before any officer reaches your porch. The first thing you ask is whether you're actually being detained. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? Word for word, memorize that line. That question matters because it forces the moment into the open. If the officer says you're free to go, you do not stay there talking. You calmly walk away, go back inside if that is safe, or end the contact. If the officer says you are being detained, then now you know the game changed. You are no longer in a friendly chat, you are in an investigative stop, and every word you say after that can hurt you. This is 100% legal. You are not being rude. You are not acting suspicious. You are asking the one question that separates a casual contact from a detention. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and this is the moment where everything usually breaks one way or the other. Bad way, most people say, why are you here? I didn't do anything. My neighbor lies all the time. Then the officers keep you talking, keep you emotional, and keep you planted in place. Good way. Smart people say, officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? Then the officer has to answer, and you finally know your position. Watch what happens when you skip this step. You think you're just explaining. The officer thinks you're giving a statement. You think you're helping yourself. The officer hears possible admissions, shifting details, and reasons to stay longer. Maybe you say, yeah, I fired a few rounds earlier, but it was safe. That sounds harmless to you, but now they have timing. They have an admission. They know where the guns are. They know you were armed recently. And if they want to push harder, you just handed them a starting point. Now watch what happens when you use the line the right way. If they say you're free to go, great. You just avoided a pointless roadside-style interview on your own land. If they say you're detained, you now know to stop volunteering details and move to your next protections. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. Terry v. Ohio says police can briefly detain you if they have specific facts pointing to possible crime. Plain English, they need more than a hunch. Brown v. Texas says police cannot just stop you and demand ID without a real legal reason. Plain English, they can't make you prove yourself just because they feel like it. So your first job is making them show which lane this is, friendly contact or real detention. Let me show you exactly why this question is so powerful. It keeps you from guessing, and guessing is what gets people jammed up. If you guess wrong and keep talking when you could leave, you lose. If you guess wrong and think you can leave during a lawful detention, you can make things worse. That one sentence makes the officer define the ground under your feet. Still watching? Good. Drop a comment and tell me if you've ever had police try to keep you talking without clearly saying whether you were free to leave. If this is already opening your eyes, hit like so more people see it. Your second tactic is the line that protects your house, your truck, your shed, your range bag, and every case on your property. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Word for word, memorize that line. You say it calmly. You do not yell it. You do not argue after it. You do not add a long speech. You just give the line, then stop. That matters because officers often ask questions in a way that sounds casual. Mind if we take a look? You got anything inside we should know about? Where were you shooting from? Can we check that vehicle? If you start explaining, you often slide into consent without even meaning to. Here's the reality. Police love vague permission. You say, I've got nothing to hide. They hear consent. You say, sure, go ahead, I was only target shooting. They hear consent. You say, my rifles are in the truck, but they're legal. They hear consent plus location plus ownership. Bad way. Most people say, I've got nothing to hide. Go ahead. Then officers search more than you expected, find something you forgot about, and your whole day explodes. Good way. Smart people say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. Then if police search anyway, your lawyer has a much stronger fight later. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it cuts off one of the biggest excuses police use later. Consent. If you give consent, you make their job easy. If you clearly refuse, you protect the record. That does not mean police will always stop. They might claim another reason. They might get a warrant. They might say they see something in plain view. But your refusal still matters because it takes away the easy path. This is 100% legal. You never have to help police search your stuff just because a neighbor got annoyed and made a call. Listen closely because this is critical. Refusing consent does not make you guilty. It makes you careful. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Many officers do not need you to say the word yes. They only need you to act like yes. Stepping aside, opening a gate, pointing toward your truck, handing over a gun case, saying, sure, it's over there. That can all become part of their story later, so your line has to be clear and short. This gets even more important on your own property. Your home and the area around it get stronger protection than random open public space. In Florida v. Jardines, the Supreme Court said police cannot use your front porch like a free search zone. Plain English, the area right around your home is not just public hunting ground for evidence. And in Caniglia v. Strom, the court said police cannot use a broad caretaking excuse to just enter homes whenever they want. Plain English, they do not get a home search shortcut just because they claim concern. Let me show you exactly how this plays out. An officer says, if you were just target shooting, then you don't mind if we look around. That sounds harmless. But your answer should not be a debate. Your answer is the line, officer, I do not consent to any searches. Then you stop. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it forces the officer to decide whether they actually have legal grounds or whether they were just fishing. Your third tactic is how you handle questions and ID without digging your own hole. Here's exactly what you say. I will identify myself if required by law. I choose to remain silent and I want a lawyer. Word for word, memorize that line. This one is powerful because it does three things at once. First, it keeps you from lying by accident. Second, it keeps you from giving half statements that get twisted. Third, it shows you are not resisting, but you are not volunteering either. A lot of people mess this up because they go to war with the officer. You do not need that. You do not need to scream about the Constitution. You do not need to say, I know my rights 10 times. You need a calm script. Bad way. Most people say, I'm not telling you anything and you can't make me. Then the officer hears attitude, the scene gets hotter, and you look less controlled. Good way. Smart people say, I will identify myself if required by law. I choose to remain silent and I want a lawyer. Then you sound calm, clear, and locked in. Why the ID part matters is simple. In some states, if police have a lawful investigative stop, you may have to give your name. Hiibel v. 6th Judicial District says that in stop and identify states, during a lawful stop, police can require basic identification. Plain English, if the stop is legal and your state has that rule, refusing your name can become its own problem. But if the stop is not legal, Brown v. Texas still matters. They cannot just invent a detention and demand ID because your neighbor complained. So your safest lane is this. Do not guess. Do not argue law school on the lawn. If you are lawfully required to identify, do that part. Then stop talking. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection because silence cannot be twisted the way nervous talking can. Here's what many people do instead. You start trying to sound innocent. I was just testing one round. I had a shotgun, not a rifle. I wasn't drunk. I only had 2 beers. That last one destroys people. You think you are helping. You are actually handing police possible crimes, possible impairment, and possible contradictions if any witness says something different. Watch what happens when you use the line correctly. The officer keeps fishing. Where are the guns now? How many rounds did you fire? Have you been drinking? Your answer does not change. I choose to remain silent and I want a lawyer. Short, calm, done. 90% of viewers click away before this part. If you're still here, you're serious about protecting yourself. Drop a comment saying I'm still here and hit like because this next piece ties the whole thing together. Now let's connect the law to what you would actually face on your property. Terry v. Ohio gives police a narrow power to stop you for a short time if they can point to real facts suggesting crime. That is not a blank check. Brown v. Texas says they cannot just stop you and demand ID with no real basis. Hiibel says if the stop is lawful, and your state requires it, giving basic ID may be required. Florida v. Jardines says the area around your home is protected from officers turning it into a search mission. Caniglia v. Strom says police do not get a fake safety shortcut into your home. Put all that together and your strategy gets clear. First, you ask if you are detained. Second, you refuse consent to search. Third, if ID is lawfully required, you give only what the law requires. Then you go silent and ask for counsel. That is not magic. It does not guarantee you avoid arrest, but it keeps you from helping the state build a case from your own mouth. Now picture your own real-life version of this. You're on your land, you've been target shooting safely, your neighbor hates guns and calls police, 2 deputies roll up, you walk out already mad. Wrong way first. You start fast. This is my property. I can do what I want. My guns are in the truck. I was just firing down by the tree line. I only had 1 beer. That neighbor is crazy. Now the deputies have your admission that you were shooting, where your guns are, and maybe alcohol. Then one deputy says, if everything is fine, you won't mind if we take a look. You step aside, they search, they keep questioning. The whole contact gets bigger because you made it bigger. Now the right way, you step out calm with your hands visible. You ask, officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? If they say you're free to go, you end the contact. If they say you're detained, you stay calm. They ask to look around. You answer, officer, I do not consent to any searches. They ask what you were shooting and where the guns are now. You answer, I will identify myself if required by law. I choose to remain silent and I want a lawyer. That is it. No extra story, no angry speech, no debate. You give them less to work with, less to twist, and less to use against you later. That is how you protect your future when the call itself is emotional and messy. Next week, I'm breaking down what you say when police claim they smell marijuana or alcohol and try to turn that into a full search. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because that tactic can save you from the most common setup of all. So here's your quick recap, and you need this burned into your memory. First, ask if you are being detained or free to go, because you need to know the ground rules fast. Second, never help police search your property, your truck, or your gear, and say the refusal clearly. Third, if ID is truly required by law, handle that part and then stop talking. Fourth, if things keep moving toward arrest, ask for a lawyer and stay quiet. You do not beat bad police work by talking more. You beat it by giving them less. Hit subscribe so you catch the next rights protection video before you need it in real life. Smash that like button if this helped you see the danger earlier, and drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay sharp, stay calm, and protect your rights.